Test, test. All right, mic works. It's recording. So down here, we could try this live YouTube.
Yeah.
I have access to that. Let's see what it does.
We have followers on YouTube.
132.
Let's just get it recorded. And
Yeah.
This is too late in the game to try to
Yeah.
add features.
No feature creep. So then what I do is I have the chat up. You can see that.
Yep.
I have the Q&A up. You can see that.
Yep.
And then I have participants up. So you know who's on, and I click on attendees. So that way.
Yep. Cool.
And then I'll do the same on my side.
Yeah, make sure that you can hear me.
And then the last thing, I think we wanted a camera. So when we're holding up pieces,
Yeah, cool. I like
you
it.
got the right light.
Yep. Cool. 4:59. Can you hear me?
I'm not in yet.
Is James on?
Yep.
James, if you can hear me, tap something in the
Do you
comments.
see him?
No, I don't see him. I see for panelists. I see one panelist.
That's you.
Dexter. Oh, that's me.
Yep. No, I don't want that. Let's see.
There we go. Somebody on.
Should tell you.
Attendees one. Did you just log in?
Yep.
Oh, William.
Oh, William, hi.
Hey, William.
You can ask him, hey, can you hear me?
Messenger is now inactive. You logged in. Okay, I see you. I just want to see me though.
Under attendees. So William's there. Say something.
Hey, how you doing, William? Oh, you can. I can hear. All right, then mute your
I
stuff.
gotta mute my stuff. Options.
There, I can mute,
No,
I
I
can
got it.
mute you.
No, I'm done.
Well, I'm gonna start.
Usually give it
Few
once
minutes.
people are on. And then we'll talk
Yeah.
and then we'll tilt down.
Yeah.
Usually at 5:03, 5:04,
Just tell me.
because we're recording.
Yeah.
Now what I'll do is this time is before I post it, I'll take it into and edit out this
Oh,
stuff.
yeah. Cool. Cool.
Can you hear? Yeah, see if you can hear us fine.
Hey, William, can you hear me good? Cool. Thank you. No, yes, we'll get to it. Yeah. I'm just going to go ahead and start.
Yep.
All right, welcome to the third in our series of build webinars. Today we're going to be doing the arm body, and this is the panel as you get it. And first things first, right? So first thing we do is, and we're going to be building this up in a little bit different fashion than the manual states. It's the same order, same instructions as the manual, but we're actually going to be building it up on top of the pivot, the finished pivot that we've done. And we're going to do that because we want to have the because this is a 4-piece. It's not single piece like the base. We want to make sure that the bearings and the arm body are all on the same center. And so we're actually going to build it up and glue it up on in situ in order to make sure that happens right. But first thing we're going to do is we've noticed that some of our kit builders are having some issues with fettling and cleaning out the strakes and the strake holes, and also not finishing up their zero layer. So I'm going to go over that again just to reinforce that. So in a 3D printer, a lot of times the very first layer is got an extra bit of ooze because the bed plates, the build plates are not really leveled very well. And so what we do is we have a little bit of fescue that is different than the geometry that was designed there, and so we need to clean that off. And what I usually do is I take an X-Acto and I just take a 45, just scrape it off a little bit. Now I've already done this and I've already prepared these, so this is a little bit of false advertising because I've already done this to these objects. But in addition to making sure that all of these zero layers are cleaned off, this isn't done right here, is we want to also, especially in high humidity environments, we also want to potentially do a lot of sanding on the where the bearings are actually seat. And yeah, we noticed this. We had a customer up in San Francisco, and what happens is the PLA, when it absorbs water, it actually swells. And so there's a little bit more fettling, a little bit more sanding that's necessary in order to get things to fit right. So at the very least, you can use a small piece of sandpaper and just run around in here. Make sure you go all the way around and keep it as round as possible. It's hard to take off a lot of material with a piece of sandpaper, so it's just a few thousandths of an inch, a few fractions of a millimeter. But that's all that's really necessary to get the bearings to seat well. But we also have, so this is for people that don't have a 3D printer, but if you have a 3D printer, we actually have a reamer. This is a 65 millimeter reamer where we've actually taken and glued some sandpaper. This is 120 grit sandpaper, and we use that to to clean out the bearing seats. Now, of course, I've already done this, so it fits in there nicely. But if you do have this problem, you'll notice that this sandpaper won't quite fit. So you actually kind of have to start at the top and open that up a little bit, and then keep pushing it in until it's all the way to the bottom. And then that works well to actually seat the bearings. And you do it for the other side also. And this one we've actually press fit in, but if you live in an area that's got a lot of moisture, you may be spending some time getting those holes nice and opened up so that it's not a problem to fit those fit the bearings in. Anyway, so we'll start with our prep work here. The next step that I'm going to do, and this is not necessarily in the order of the manual, but I like to get everything ready. This is the stator holder for the arm body, and it's fairly straightforward. Again, this has already been pre-fettled, but I use the stator that's numbered the same as the number on the pivot harmonic drive. And I know what this is because I've taken this off and I've looked at it, so I know what that this is the right stator for. And these are matched. The stators and the flex blinds are actually matched pairs. So you want to get the correct one. And what I do is looking through the holes. I want to line these up. I look through, and you can see, and then I can press that in. And now they're lined up. Now, I'm actually not going to put the bolts in there, because the bolts that hold these in actually come off of the end cap, the protection cap that is on your flex blind. So these are 20 millimeter M3 screws, and those are the ones that we're going to use from there. So we're going to put this, build up the end arm body on the end before we actually apply all of this. So I'm going to set this aside and move right along. So let's see, can you see that from here? Can you see it?
Yep, I can see it.
All right. So I'm going to start with this, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to put all of these things together like this on top of here. One of the things I should mention is that this particular part right here has got this hole, and this hole it's printed like this, and so there's this needs to be cleaned out. This is going to require fettling. I've already fettled this, but if you try to force the carbon fiber strake through there with a hammer or any kind of force, it's very likely that that this thin section here will break off. So you want to make sure you get that fettled in there and not force through, so that it actually slides through, fairly easily. Now this is not a problem, because this is just kind of a mold, what we call an internal molding technique, where all this is going to be filled up with carbon fiber and strakes and epoxy. So it just needs to orient the carbon fiber strakes. But if it breaks, it will be oriented incorrectly, probably. So first thing I do is fit this over the bearing and just push it down until it's completely seated in there. And then the next thing I do is I actually put this piece on, and this goes over the bearings here, and that didn't actually press in very hard, but And actually, this is very loose on here, which means I am going to actually put some epoxy on this, because you don't want this to move around at all. If it's too loose, then if you can actually move it around and it's not a press fit on there, then we're going to want to actually, once this is together, we don't want this to move around, because this will actually create backlash in the system. And so I'm going to actually epoxy the bearing race holder on this side as I put this in. But as Todd's already had talked to you before, one of the things that we do before we actually start applying glue is we dry fit everything. And I've already dry fit most of these with the other strakes, but I'm going to do that now with these strakes. And just as something else we've noticed is that the strakes that we've got cut, they have some little danglies on here, and they're not really, it's easy to strip that carbon fiber out of there. Carbon fiber is only strong in the direction of the weave. You can actually pull this off very easily. And so what we do, sandpaper. What I do is I like to chamfer these with the sandpaper. It's very easy, and I just kind of roll it, or roll it like this. And as I do it, I turn it. Just circle it and turn, and then turn. Do it on that side, and then this side. You can see it's fairly straightforward. And I get a nice chamfer out of that. Yeah, let's get the light. Do the other side. I'm going to do this really quick for these, because they're unprepared. And actually, fine sandpaper works better than coarse sandpaper, because coarse sandpaper can just tear up the carbon fiber, and actually cause it to start to separate. And actually, I'm going to glove up for this, because this carbon fiber is not really good for you. And yeah, I would even recommend using a mask for it. You don't want to breathe this stuff in. Carbon fiber dust. Your body doesn't metabolize it well, because it's just carbon, even though you're made out of carbon. And I'm going to get them all in. I'm going to put them back. Also, notice that there's three different sizes of these large strakes, and it's important that the longest one, which happens to be this one, goes in the front. Anyway, let's do these. Yeah. I'll come back to those when we go put them in. All right, and that's quite a bit of carbon fiber dust there. So I'm getting that out of the way. All right. Now we're just gonna dry fit these up.
Okay.
Yeah. So and the orientation of this is specific. This is not symmetrical, right? So we've got this little bolt hole here, and that goes on the right side as you look at it. It goes in this direction here. Now like this, it fits that way, but you won't be able to get that front bolt in. Anyway, so the long one, well, oh yeah. All right, so here's another little trick that that we do is this needs a little bit of sanding or filing. Where's the big file? Just to this is 0 layer here. And this one also. Because that is a flush fit with there. There, much better. And that was the difference in just that first layer.
Were you going to glue? Oh, you're dry.
Nope, I'm dry fitting. Yep. I'm going to dry fit with this off of here. Because that's going to need some more.
That's 0 layer.
Yep. Yeah, there we go. All right. Let's dry fit the whole thing while we're here. I know this back one will fit. Okay, and then my all right, so that looks like fairly well dry fit. All right, so I'm going to pull these out, and now that's ready to build up. What I'm actually going to do a little bit. All right, getting messy here. So now we know it all fits. I'm going to put this back on here. But now I'm actually going to build up this part. I just remembered we're going to change the order. This Noah was working on this, and he came up with this idea. Why don't we put the motors and all of this stuff on the back here before we actually put it together, and then we're not kind of trying to fight the some tight spaces. So we're gonna put that together now, and this is very straightforward. We use these bolts, or these bolts here. We're gonna put the bearings that keep the external gear from warping as we tighten the belts. We're going to put those on, and it's pretty straightforward to just stick the bolts in and screw this in. I think Todd went to get me a power drill. Yep, he did. So you just have to flush it up against the bottom here. That's got a lot of torque.
Yeah, I don't think you can dial it down either. It's $8. It's from Harbor Freight. No washer on that side?
No.
Okay.
No, the washer goes on the other side on top of the bearing. Nice. Works good. All right. You put the bearings on, and then just these number 6 washers. And there's number 632 nuts. And there's the other one. And these don't have to be really tight. They just have to not come off.
And we leave them long as potential hard points?
No, they're
someone drumming down.
they could take them off, yeah, if they wanted to, but they don't stick up. They don't stick outside of this.
Oh, that's right.
So, all right. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to put the motors on here, and we can dry fit them up also. And the only trick to this is making sure that this this opening here, that the motor seats inside of it. So this is carved out just big enough for this to snap into it. And as you can see, there's a little bit of fescue right at the bottom here, so I got to take that out. And make sure that all the support material for the print is actually flush up against there.
That the wires are inside.
Yep.
I don't know if they can hear me.
All right, so some of you got long shafts, one long shaft and one short shaft for this, and the long shaft actually goes on the right side, not the left side. So looking at it this way, the long shaft is actually on this side, but it doesn't really matter because it works with either one of them. And the wires go towards the center, towards the bearing. So like this, and for this side, it goes like that. Make sure the wires are actually going, this direction. All right, so this one fits up nicely. Okay, it doesn't fit up nicely. I'm going to take a little bit more out of there. Get a little bit more aggressive than just filing. There we go. There. Now it's snap in there. So that's a good fit. Make sure the other side fits also. Wire in. That actually works good there. That snaps in nicely. All right, so we know those are going to work. Let's go ahead and glue those up. And this is actually a fragile part. This part right here, you got to take some care. It's actually very thin sections right in here. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to, this is really just a kind of a framework for positioning this. When by putting the epoxy in here and gluing this down and bolting it down, we're actually, creating this this hybrid, or this two material sandwich here, which so this actually becomes the main strengthening point, component for these little bat wings here. All right, so let's get to gluing, and then this will be kind of the last step before we glue up the rest of this stuff. All right, so I'm gonna, and you want to be generous with this. Oops, sorry, lights in my eyes.
Yeah, I didn't mean that.
Yeah. Okay, and you want a fairly significant bead on here. The only thing you don't want to do is you don't want to get glue in the holes, because if you do, then and you start putting the screws in, then the glue will actually go into the motors, and there's not a lot of room inside of those motors to actually hold the screw. Here we go. Because there's bolts down inside of there, and so we're using 8mm screws. And so if there's epoxy inside of there, it'll compress that. Try to compress that epoxy, and it'll be hard to actually get that to seat down. And so you don't want, you want a lot of glue in there, mainly on the edges and sides, and that'll press out when you put this in, but not in the hole slots. And that goes inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There we go. Make sure that snaps in. There we go. And we got a little bit of glue in here, in this one, in this hole. So I'm actually going to take that out with a little pin. That's good. So I've got a pin here, and I'm just going to stick it in there and make sure that it doesn't go all the way down. Actually, I'm going to wipe it off. And I'm just sticking the back of the head of the pin in to pull it out, and then rub it off on a paper towel. And that looks pretty good now. All right. All right, now we're going to put washers and 8mm M3 hardware. And screwdriver. Okay. Now, as you tighten these down, it'll pull that, it'll suck that motor up into that slot. Now, in the manual, it talks about two different sizes of washers here, and we normally put a smaller washer, an M3 washer there, but it turns out that it's okay to go ahead and put the number 6 washer there.
It looks better.
And yeah, it looks more homogeneous. Now this one is one that had the epoxy in there, and I can feel that hydraulic pressure, pushing back on me. But there's not so much in there that I can't get the screw seated. And after they're all in, I like to differentially tighten them. Okay, and then clean up a little. Like to have purdy robots. All right, the other side. Nice and thick. But I already noticed that I got some on that hole. Instead of cleaning it out now, I'm gonna take it off before I get that motor in there. Here we go. And making sure that the wires go in. Laces in.
Laces in, yep.
That was a Jim Carrey movie. There's that laces out. That was his I think it was his first Pet Detective, yeah, Ace Ventura.
Matt's joined us. Cornelius, hey Matt.
Hey Matt.
It's a wrist break.
Well, I turn it because I'm trying to control the torque. It's I don't want to over torque that until I get all the nuts in, all the bolts in. Actually, let's do this in parallel. All right, and I'm gonna. I preferred my own torquing. I can kind of feel what the values are. I want to set that at about 30 foot-pounds of torque. Yeah, just enough to see it cinch up. You can see that glue start to squeeze out of there. And the important thing is really just making sure these are straight up and down, perpendicular to this. So if they're cockeyed this way, then when we put the belts on, they'll tend to roll off, and that's no good. All right, let's clean this up. All right, now we're ready to put it on here and do the rest of the glue up. But before I do that, I'm going to check something. Because we have all thread, we actually dress the ends here to get the after we cut them. But sometimes we don't get it really good, and I want it. And you need to be able to rely on being able to actually put those bolts on, or the nuts on, while you're, here's the perfect example. While you're, I'll put another one when we go to glue. So that doesn't really go on very well, and if it doesn't, then there's some effort that you need to put into it. There we go. Hopefully one of the sides goes on. And if you can't get the other side on, then this is a technique I use to make sure you get bolts on both sides.
And I can do some of these fire.
Yeah. Yep. Go ahead. Do that. I'll take it and I'll just put it on the side that I can get it, and then slide it to the other end.
This one is good on both sides.
Both sides? Okay.
Yeah.
And if you need to, you can actually then just, man, that's not coming off. That's not going anywhere. Anyway, that's good. We'll use that for the other side. Make sure this one works on both sides. That's good. And that's a little hard, but it goes on. Good. How's that one?
You good?
Both sides?
Yeah. I checked one, let me check the other. Yep, no, I got lucky.
Okay, cool. All right, back to glue. Put some gloves on. Now this epoxy, actually, you're going to want to put gloves on and protect yourself, because
And goggles.
and goggles, yeah, because it is if you get it on your skin, it causes your skin to itch, which tells me that something funky is going on there that your body doesn't like. So you need to protect yourself from this. So we selected the epoxy not on it based on its toxicity, but based upon its strength. So,
It doesn't expand.
and yeah, it doesn't expand exactly. I'm just cleaning this up because I don't like messy robots. All right. Let's put this together. Now, when I put this together, I also like to goop up. I like to want to epoxy this whole area here. So I put epoxy on top, bottom, face of this, and the face of this. Both sides.
And you were going to put some on the bearing.
That's right. Okay, hole on this side. And I'm also going to put some right here so that the bearing not too much, because we don't want to glue that bit, the inside of that race, the part that holds the balls in there, because then it won't move. Although we are going to move it around quite a bit while it's drying, so not too worried about that. Okay. Now I'm going to take the long one. It's actually pretty similar in length.
Yeah, they're only 2 mil difference, but that 2 mil at the back is important. Then you
Actually,
lube up the
well,
inside.
we're just gonna. I'm gonna put one of these bolts through first. These are non-precision, but they'll hold things together while we. Get one on the other side. There we go. That'll help. Yep.
Slide it, the whole project over.
There we go. All right. All right. Now I'm going to coop up the edges of this. And I'm also going to force some down here. And also right through here, because this actually is where it connects in. And a little in here. And here's another important thing I just noticed. It's good to have this code disk away from all this goo. You don't want to get that messed up. Now, this is critical to get this the positioning of this front strake correct. Okay, and what we actually want it. Clean this out. Now again, the reason we're building this up on top here like this is we want the center of those two bearings to be right on the center of the transmission and right in the center of that motor. Now, once I have this first piece in here, I'm going to put the strakes that hold this in, because this actually gives us a directional alignment of this. So, put some goo in here. And that's where these strakes come into play.
And these are the H111A.
Yep. And we're going to have to compress this down.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the reason for this, is that the reason we put these strakes in here, it gives us the, make sure we have it aligned in 2 axes.
The reason for the length of those bolts is we can use them as hard points to mount other stuff on that you may want mounted on the robot, right?
Yep. And this is a temporary thing. We're using this all thread to make sure that these are compressed together.
And your pot life on the epoxy again is easily 20 minutes.
Yeah, so you don't have to hurry through this. And with that mixing tip, it's 20 minutes every time you press the trigger.
Yeah.
So
That's a good trick.
I'm just gonna barely tighten these down because I still got the back to put on. Okay. In fact, I'm gonna put that on now so that we have it in there.
Yeah, I made that mistake once.
Go. All right. I'm going to put the other one in.
And you need to comment the importance of the top being sticking out the back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Todd was just reminding me that you don't want these,
No, this,
oh, yeah,
the top.
Yep, that worked. Yeah, I started that, didn't finish it.
Highlight that again.
Yeah. All right, now that I got these two main strakes in there, and I can push down on this. I'll bet you it goes in. There we go. Let's get these in. And I like to do these by just putting the epoxy on the edges of it, and as you push them down, they draw the epoxy in. Whoops, that went too far. It's actually touching the that motor, so pull that out. There we go. Yeah.
Yep. Good save.
Just a little tap. There. All right. There's that. All right. Now, here's one of the most important things about this, and it's very critical to get this so that we get this correct. We want to make sure that this strake is actually pushed through so that it comes out the other end at least 2 millimeters. That's too much. I'm going to take a tap on it just a little bit. Actually, that's not a good idea. I can feel it pushing it away from the, yeah. So, I want to leverage that. I'm going to hold it while I hit it. Nope, I'm not going to do that.
It's out too far?
It is out too far.
What you really want is just about 2.
There we go. There we go. That's perfect.
That's about 3 millimeters, right?
Yeah. Well, let's measure it.
You got a caliper?
Yeah, the real. Well, and these need to be clean too. I want this clean. Well, don't worry if you get epoxy on one side of this disc. It's we can spin it around to where it's the epoxy isn't. So we do want to clean this off while it's wet, so that we don't have to file it later when we're lighting the robot.
That brought up the master builder certification.
It's a good idea. I guess that Matt's talking about having a master builder certification. That is a really good idea. I should go to that.
So the importance of cleaning this off is this is a leverage, or you'll be.
It's an alignment
It's
piece
an alignment piece
for the pivot code disk, or the pivot code, the optical components,
so
receiver transmitter. Cool. Yeah, let's measure that. So yeah, you're right, Todd. That's about 3 millimeters. 2.75 millimeters.
Is good.
Yep. All right. So the other consideration is not just the 2.75 millimeters here, but that all the strakes on this side we want to be flush with this. Otherwise, we have to grind them down also, and the pivot stator holder comes over the top of this. So I'm going to put, now that we've got the two main orienting carbon and strengthening carbon fiber strakes in there, I'm going to put the other pieces of all thread in there and tighten down on this. And we know we've got the right.
And make sure they clean the top strakes as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're still got to put the I-beam in there.
And again, guys, if you have any questions, Matt, James, William, while we're doing this, type them and I'll get them answered. Maybe.
Let's talk about them anyway.
We'll talk about them. See.
Boy, this is really difficult putting these bolt nuts on here with the gloves. Actually, that's really hard. I'm going to turn that around.
That one not going in, right?
Nope.
What was that the nutty one to begin with?
Nutty. That was a straight hole. That is not the all-thread hole. There's the all-thread hole. Got it in the wrong hole.
No.
Remember, we are in Vegas. Ah, nuts. Here, I got a spare one here, just in case I dropped one in the middle of filming. Yeah, I'm also recommending wearing clothes that you can throw away when you're done, or be branded with epoxy and be proud of it. Own it. Like, I build robots.
What kind of torque you putting on it right now?
I'm putting quite a bit, well, not quite a bit. It's again about probably 20 foot-pounds of torque. And you want to do this, you know, you don't want to put it all in at once. You want to kind of move around the circle and just tighten it up until they all get to the about 20 foot-pounds. Not so much, most people don't know what that is, so we'll give a different measure. Basically, it's tight enough that that it's snug up against here, but it's not deforming the plastic.
Yeah. Matt says we should have Haddington branded science aprons. I like it.
That's a great idea. Well, we do. We even got the shirt with the we should send a T-shirt with every kit.
We should. Yeah. Plastic ones. Yeah.
Oh, plastic apron. That's a good idea. Okay, that's good. All right. Now we're going to put in the other strakes. Get those glued up. And this is a kind of a trick. We don't really want to kind of put glue on all at the same time. I actually don't put any glue at the first, and I insert the top in, and then while it's down here, can you see that, Todd? Right in here, before I insert it into this bottom hole, then I kind of put the glue on the edges there so that that goes into it.
And then same thing on the.
And then the same thing on the top here. I put it right next to the hole so that it can wick in as I push it in. And I'll actually kind of move it back and forth in there to fill that. And I want these to be past flush on the top side here. Now that I got the bolts done, I'm going to put these gloves back on.
Yeah.
It really makes your fingers itch if you you get this epoxy on your fingers. And it's probably, I don't know, it's probably dangerous.
Well, the material safety data sheet.
It says, yeah, don't get it on your skin.
Fingers, ventilated.
Yep.
Don't drink and glue.
Don't drink and glue. Good, I like it. All right, same drill for the other ones.
Oh, he said, and yeah, Matt, I just see that. Just thought someone holding a flashlight shining the holes, or the holes are part of it. Would be good. We could see if that works. Next time I'll turn on the flashlight.
Okay. Oh yeah, flashlight from the phone. Good idea.
I don't know if that's helping any.
Just past flush. All right.
And again, don't get the glue on the
Code disc.
code disc.
Okay. Couple more. And clean it off. All right. Now, while it's like this, and it's bolted down, we're going to cut this off, or we're going to pull this out, and we're going to seat the bearing inside of the inside of there. Let me clean off. Actually, let's put the I-beam in first. Old messy robots. So you're there. Cool. All right, so now I'm going to construct the I-beam and stick it down through here. And this is where you can be generous with the glue again. It's designed to actually be filled up with this. So, and this is a butting up against the that strake that's going through there. A little bit more glue in there. There we go. And then I'll actually put a bead on each side of this. Because when I slide in the large one, and now there we go. You know, you got the right amount in there when it starts to push out the glue. You want to get this so that it actually touches the carbon fiber strike that's going down the other side. This is your main support system for the arm. Cool. And because this came out of the edges here, we know that we've got that chamber completely full of epoxy. And then you're going to want to clean out the rest of it. And I actually will clean it up along the edges to get the I-beam completely covered, those intersections.
You don't want it too much because you still have this intersection coming down.
Well, yeah. So you want the center of it cleaned, but the edges, the corners where the I-beam is, you could go ahead and fill those up because that has the same profile. Yeah, the profile here. Can you see that?
Mm.
It's opened up quite a bit to allow for that glue along the edges of that I-beam.
There, that's a better shot. Right there.
There. Okay.
Good.
And you want these strakes to be cleaned, these small strakes that are sticking out, because there's absolutely no room. That's almost a press fit when we put the tube on there, the carbon fiber tube for that first link. Actually, that's the third link. And this will save you a lot of sanding later, getting these nice and cleaned off here. And all right. Now we're actually going to put the washers and the screws in the on top of the flex blind holder, which is that 3D printed piece that actually holds the harmonic drive components, the flex blind, and we're going to tighten down on it with these 12 millimeter bolts and these washers. And what's going to happen? That's going to press down on that inner race. And that inner race, and that pre-stresses that inner race, so that there's no play in the bearings. So I'm going to put this off now, and I'm going to pull off the flex blind protector. And these are the bolts that we're actually going to reuse in the stator. These are the ones that are actually going to hold the stator on. So don't discard them. Okay. I'll let you pull those out while I'm doing this next step. Okay, so now we're going to take 6 of these number 12s of the hex heads and these washers, and we're going to insert them into. Let's see.
Sorry, it's shiny.
Yeah. Into the holes here. Let's see if we can't get some light on that.
Oh, yeah, that's
Actually,
that showed up really well.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to grab a transmission and just anyway. So
Right in your face, but
that's all right. Can you see well? Can you see it good?
I can.
Okay. So I'm going to put it on the washer on the screw. Hold it in front of the light. And then now these are just the right size. There's a little carve out in the in that flex blind holder that holds that washer, and so and it's just the right size to position that washer correctly. So sometimes you need to make sure that it's actually seated in that part, or else it won't actually touch the. See that's incorrect right there, because it's not actually pushed down into the plastic. So I'm going to use a screwdriver and push it down. There we go. Now it's seated correctly. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can you see did you see the difference?
That it's inside the lip.
Yeah, it's under the lip there. Yep. And I just finger tighten these at first because we're gonna want to do a differential tightening on it. Go. There we go. Now, and be careful not to hit the flex spline here. This is probably one of the most fragile parts of the whole system. I mean, you won't notice anything to begin with. It'll still work, but what'll happen is it'll just shorten the lifetime of it of the harmonic drive. All right. Now, as you can see, the washer actually touches the inside race of that bearing, and when we tighten down on it, we'll actually deform those bearings or that washer just a little bit, and we know we'll have the right pressure and pre-stress on that bearing. Let's get all 4 of them in. Go. And the last one. I'm going to leverage gravity here. You've seen the other ones. There we go. And you guys don't have to assemble it, this way for the camera. You can turn it up and let gravity use gravity to help you orient those washers. But now once it's in, we're going to do differential tightening, which means we're going to come here and tighten that just a little bit. Come over and tighten this just a little bit, and you can feel you want them to have about the same torque. And then come up here a little bit, and don't tighten them all the way down. Kind of just move around the pattern, getting tighter and tighter. And you really only have to do it 2 or 3 times. And I can start to see those form. Let's see. I'd rather use this. You can feel it better. Oh, those are nice. Okay, so those now that's not going anywhere. And while this is drying up, we kind of move this around so that we can make sure that there's no binding anywhere in there, and that it moves freely. With that bearing pre-stressed like that, it'll actually amplify any if this is off center, if the bearings are not centered with the motor, it'll actually amplify that feeling. But this is really smooth. You'll feel it bind, just a little bit of binding if it's off center. And you want to just kind of if you do find a bind, and you want to move it back and forth through that bind and loosen it up. What that's doing is that's causing all these glue joints to seat in there and be aligned, perfectly centered aligned in there. But looks like we got a pretty good alignment. I can't feel any differences, and there's absolutely no movement. See, there is movement. Oh, but that's because that's right. That's why we put glue on that bearing, because I do feel that movement in there. So what we'll do is, as this dries, every 10 or 15 minutes, we'll come and we'll drive it around in a circle and make sure that gets lined up right. Anyway, that's what we'll do for now. We want to actually we'll prep. Well, let's prep the stator now. I've already got Todd's already got three of the bolts in there. But we'll just talk about what we're going to do. Problem is, I don't want to take these screws off, because that's what's holding this assembly together. But we'll talk about what we're going to be doing when that dries. So to put the stator on,
you get a nut in that one?
Yeah, there's a nut in there. Put the stator on. We want to get the nuts in there, but so that they don't fall off when we put it on. But we don't want to. We don't want it to tighten it down. We want the stator to actually slide around a little bit inside of here. Now it's a little bit oversized, just a tiny bit oversized, so that when we do put this on here, this stator we can align it to the flex spline also. So yeah, those are. So you can see that let's see, they're not actually all the way down, but they're far enough to be started in the thread holes. Actually, that one is. There we go. And one of the ways I do that is I tighten it down all the way, just to make sure that everything's flush and that that support material is cleaned out, and that the screws are actually all started. Like this one wasn't. Put your finger on it. Yeah. Now that it is. And then what I do is I back off by a couple of turns. Tighten it down and then back it off. And what will happen is then this stator will just slide a little bit back and forth once we put it on. And we'll start to put it on, but we won't put it all the way on. So this is one of the reasons why we need all these things flush, is because the stator mounts flush here. So after this dries, I'm going to redo this procedure, but I'll tell you about it right now, and we'll simulate it. But we're going to want to take these nuts off and these washers off after this dries in order to put this on. But we're gonna put it on anyway, just to show you what you do after the rig is dry. What we do is we slide it over the top. And oh, that's not even going to go in because those washers are in the way. So we're not even going to be able to simulate it. Now let's see if I can loosen it up and move them out. Yeah, I can do that. That'll work.
You're actually going to move them?
No, I'm gonna loosen them up and then retighten them with those washers out of that out of the way of that of the stator holder. Still want to keep the pressure on these. Car. There we go.
Yeah, where's the car keys?
This side. Make sure those are tied again. Okay, that looks like it's cleaned out. Now, remember, these bolts and these washers are off in the real drill. Now we just slide it down until this, we get to the very top layer. Okay, so that's the stator is just now barely touching the flex spline, but it's not actually engaged. Right? And so what we want to do is we want to very lightly press this in until it engages. We don't want to use any kind of force on this. There, I can feel it just engaging. Now, what I want to do is, I don't want to damage the flex spline, so I want to push this on as parallel to those, so these gear teeth are in the same plane, same orientation as I push this down. The way I do that, so once I get it just touching, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to rotate this a couple of times forwards and backwards and make sure that it moves very, very smoothly without any binding. If it's offset, then you'll feel binding in there, and as you kind of push it around that area, it will straighten it back up. So it actually is pretty smooth right now. So then I'm going to put equal pressure. Oops, this side moved and this one didn't. And so as I move that, I can feel the bind right over here. Anyway, once you get it about halfway on, then you can slide it the rest of the way, and it's fairly easy. But it's actually hitting it against the nuts now. So That's the technique to actually get this in. And once it's flush against the back here, then we're going to put the washers and the nuts back on and tighten that down. And once it's tightened down, then we're going to continue moving this back and forth and back and forth, and we can actually put a little bit of pressure on the on this, and you can see the stator in there moving around. Well, you can't really right now, but you'll see it moving around. And once it's nice and smooth, you move it around a bunch of times with your finger here. Once it's really smooth, moving around through 180 degrees of the motion. That's about 30. Then and you can back drive it a little bit like this. It's really smooth right now. Then you get it to a point. Oh, there it is, moving around. It's centered, and then you can tighten up these bolts. After you move it back and forth and slide it back and forth like this.
Matt has to take off, so thanks for watching, Matt.
All right. Well, we're done. Actually,
yeah,
that's
actually good timing.
So now this is not.
Cheers.
Yep, this is not finished product. The finished product is after this dries, we're going to redo this step with these nuts and washers out of the way, and they go on the top. And then that's the arm body.
Already attached to the pivot.
Yeah, already attached to the pivot. I'm going to pull this off.
It is different than the owner's or the assembly manual, but we found this way to be the better way. We'll update the manual as we get to it, but we're hoping people watch these videos.
Yeah.
And use the manual as a supplement.
It's the same steps. It's just we're assembling it on the pivot.
And
so
we're not putting the 1 inch.
Oh yeah, and we're not putting that on there.
Yeah,
right.
That's already attached.
That's right. That's
here.
already attached.
That's how it comes. So, all right, William.
All right.
And Matt and James, thanks for joining us. I'll post this. I'll do little edits on the beginning, but post it to the webinar page tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Cheers. Good. That's significant because people want that belt on there. The only downside to I ended the meeting for all.